So today, we're going to be looking at some previous artwork that I've already prepared for my comic book that I'm working on, which is kind of why we're doing this all to begin with. One of the things about being a comic book artist is everything that is required of you in order to be a comic book artist. You pretty much have to be an anatomist, an interior designer, nature biologist artist, landscape architect, cinematographer, lighting director, clothing, fashion designer, automotive, machine engineer, all of those things. And if you do them well, and basically nobody will notice. So getting down to, that seems like a tall order. It is. And trust me, every one of these disciplines that I've just mentioned is something that you learn along the way, and sometimes you can fail miserably at any single one of them, or maybe all of them, depending on how bad your efforts were. I'm going to show you now some pages out of my current comic project, and this was the original. Overall, not horrible. I kind of like the fact that I was using a kind of a crane shot for this. Now, this character over here and this character over here are my series heroes, and the guy down here is a supporting cast. Now, what has happened here is that a creature has showed up of mythical legend and lore, and our two stalwart heroes have dispatched it by ripping it in half, hoping to save the two people that had just gotten eaten by it. And that's the character that's kind of covered in goo in the center here. Now, overall, I was pretty happy with these images when I had drawn them, and just kind of went, oh, well, good enough, moving on. You'll see that I have not filled in much for shadows or what we call the blacks. That is because what I fully intended for the second issue was to be doing all of the inking fully digital. Now I've decided that all of that will happen digital, including the coloring and word balloons and any editor's notes, what have you, sound effects, all that stuff will all be done using computers. So I didn't fill in any lighting details or anything like that, just minor ones just to get them in there. Now that was the top part of that page, and then the bottom part was, I'm going to scroll that up so you can see. The bottom part of that page continues on the secondary cast member. We'll just call him Q. He's clearly upset and yelling, and this character here, we'll call her T, she smacks him in the head and knocks him out to shut him up. And the main hero here are, our native god, demigod, actually. He's like, why did you hit him? We're friends, aren't we? They decide that they're going to have to do something about the creature they ripped in half, because right down here, it's actually pulling itself back together again. So our hero grabs it and then throws half of it off into the distance, into the mountains and bric-a-brac. Now that was fine for me. I had kept it pretty much like that without changing anything. And then I realized I was already moving on. I'd finished that issue and moved on to the next one and kept writing. And then I realized, I kept looking at it and going, there's things here that really, really bother me. And so I said, number one, his face right here, Q's face, just looks a little too Archie Comics and not good enough. And I just in the past I was just kind of, forget it, good enough, move on. But in these COVID times, now that I've got some extra, breathing room with things as the whole world shut down, I decided, okay, I'm not going to just let it sit like that. So I redrew the entire page. And most of the shots that are here were pretty much the same. I just tweaked things. So once again, we will show you the top part here, and we'll just do a quick overlay of that, the changes. Now the changes here filled in all the shadows and shades and all of that. So I think it works out a little bit better, helps distinguish where everybody is in this space. Also, this T is just kind of standing here, and initially that was fine. But then I realized, no, I wanted to show her more in a character style pose. So changed it to this one. And, she's got a nice bum, so it works out for everybody. Now, taking that and then looking again at the bottom half, once again, archy face, there's other things in here. This arm is ridiculously long. If I actually drew it all the way it should be, he's got like an ape arm here. It's just no damn good. And it's things you catch later on, right? You just I looked at it and went, oh my God, that's horrible. What the hell? And I never liked this thing. It just, this pose he was in, I'm trying to hide it in shadow and shade and stuff like this. I didn't like the face. It's just head seems too small, and just tons of things that I just couldn't stand anymore. What I was going to do was just excise the whole thing and redraw the whole just that panel, leave the rest of it. But then I realized there were little things in here that I didn't like either. This is way too skinny for a single panel to show what I really was trying to get in there. So here we go. Here's the new shot. So we looked at that garbage, and now here's the new page. Just 10 times better face, more emotion, and more indicative of who this character Q is. And I saw no problem with the original shot, other than a few little minor changes, and threw in the shading on T. Corrected the hand here, now it's correct, and shortened the box a little, the overall panel. And this is the new panel. You'll see that it's not quite complete, but that's what we're going to do today. So the drawing portion begins here, and I am going to, basically what I'm going to be showing you is how to shade and how to apply shadow to your characters. This gives them that extra, dimension that I think you would want. I just pretty much sat down and just realized that for most part, because he's a native demigod, and I'm always kind of showing him less shadowed and shaded up. But since the sun is behind him, it's just kind of lent itself to having more shade on the front of him. This actually, just quickly, is the sketch that I did first. So you sit down and figure out where all the muscles are and everything like that, and just what you intend into it. So sit down, do that quickly, bang, transpose it, change the odd little bit. Also, the hand grasping panel is much larger than the original. And so I was happier with that. And this panel, I actually didn't change much on it at all. I was pretty happy with it, except for, in the other one, his feet aren't in the shot, and I pulled a Rob Liefeld and didn't have his feet in it. So when I came back, I said, no, we'll get his feet in there. So here we are. We're now going to sketch of his face, but we'll move on. So much like in the last drawing, we are trying to convey muscles on this carapace that's or armor that the lead character Kay is wearing here. So I kind of like the idea
And I've always loved this about comics, that with lines and filling in with inks or just the pencil itself, you bring something alive. It's a kind of magic. Hopefully Queen won't come after me for that. So shading is our way of creating your light source, and always in every panel, every single thing, where's the light coming from? So in this case, they're outside, so we're going the sun. And so where's the sun? What time of day is this particular shot occurring in? So with the sun behind him, I'm in my head, in the script, I kind of have this occurring in late afternoon, so well, not late, but 4 o'clock-ish. So it's coming from the side, so we leave that side of the face white. There's also another comic convention here that you'll see quite a lot, and that is white spacing the eye. It does, in this case, Kay is kind of slitting his eyes down because he's looking at this creature's bits kind of tendriling together, and he's going out, damn it, this thing's already trying to restore itself after they ripped it in half. Now, quite honestly, my favorite character to apply shading and shadows to is the character T. In this shot up here, she's framed in shadow, so I didn't put anything on her. I just left that. We'll just leave that to the coloring. It didn't feel like it was, and not only that, she's quite small in the shot, so if we shaded her, she'd just kind of blend into the background and you wouldn't notice her. And more often than not, when I'm perusing things, usually I'm trying to figure out where and what the character's saying in that panel. Sometimes I vet it when I'm talking about the book. I just kind of blurt something out and see if I get a laugh or see if I get the desired effect from the person who's looking at it. So I've rewritten dialogue for panels when I realized that my on-the-fly demonstrations were better than what I originally wrote. As you can see here, Kay has the superheroic physique. That lends itself to the proportioning for superheroic physique. Dynamic Anatomy by Bern Hogarth taught me just about everything I use now. You can find that book just about anywhere, and I do recommend it. Average human is 6 heads high. So if you look at yourself, you measure your head, you would be about 6 of your heads tall. Superheroes break that convention and generally can be 7.5 or even 8 heads tall. There's a lot of laws in human anatomy, like one eye fits in between your eyes, and generally you're 3.5 eyes to the bottom of your nose. You are 1 eye between the bottom of your septum to the top of your lip. That kind of thing is repeated over and over. So when I'm drawing, I do use those formulas to make sure everything looks right. And a trick that I'm sure a lot of you use to see if things are in proportion or just look plain right, just grab the piece of paper, take it, turn it backwards, and then look at it through light. If it still looks good, then it's fine. Also, something I've learned along the way after making mistakes or just generally screwing it up was the principle of face first. When working on any of these, more so in the inking stages, but since I'll be now doing that pretty much digitally and not with actual ink, it's kind of less of an issue. But face first is going in, making sure the face is correct on all of the characters in the shot. And when we're inking the faces first. Because trust me, if you screw it up, then you haven't ruined the entire page. The worst thing is to ink the whole page, then screw it up at the end on the face. Nothing is more aggravating than that. So always nail the faces first and then go after everything after that. A friend of mine said, you don't have too many shots where the characters are, face forward like this shot. And I said, well, the reason for that is not because it's difficult, it's because it's damned easy. So I don't want to have face forward shots because they're the easiest face to draw. A 3/4 turn face is extremely hard, and I will use that more often than anything else. Tilted down, tilted up, and every character's face is their own. There have been a number of artists over the years who were very accomplished and really celebrated. Some of them are still heroes to me. But that being said, they pretty much drew the same face for everybody repeatedly. And it was strange because until somebody pointed that out to me, I didn't even notice that. And now I can't help but see it. So I truly appreciate when you see an artist's ability to delineate the faces of his characters or the characters repeatedly. Once again, I think if what it takes is for the individual to look across the body of your work, see where it is that you need to concentrate a little more, lack of a better way to say it, effort on. But mine was definitely trying to figure out camera angles, drawing it as if it was the storyboards of the movie. What would I want to see? So in the past, I was letting myself get away with kind of very simple shots where the character just looked neat and give him a cool costume and then drawing no background or something very limited. But the character looked neat, so you can get away with it. Everyone goes, oh, wow, that's a cool drawing. And just realized he could be anywhere. He's standing in a voidless white space. But now I really enjoy creating areas for backgrounds, and that solidifies the action and the character motivations and things. Now, you get a good establishing shot right off the bat, like the monster tore in half, and all the characters are in that one single shot. That's kind of like the David Lean 75mm shot, and putting everything in there. Then you can go into close-ups of faces and things like that, or you don't necessarily have to draw the background. In some cases, it's better if you don't, because it'll distract. Not only that, there's dialogue. So if you draw something complex back there, well, that's where the dialogue's going. So you're going to block it anyway, so don't bother. Save yourself a little trouble. It's always been a question for many, many decades in comic books. Do you draw the guy's crotch? And just what do you do when you get to that crotch area? You're just like, are you showing something or nothing? Luckily, he's in shade here, so I'll just shade it all. It doesn't matter. But at one point in time, the Comics Code Authority would have sent that artwork back with a little note and say, "You're showing a bulge." And then they would have to tell the artist that, I'll fill that in, or they'd have a staff artist just go and do that. Kind of like when the church went in and had all these sculptors put leaves over the crotches of all the men, all the male nudes. A hitherto unknown fact about Kay's armor is that I shouldn't even tell you, but I'm gonna. That it is alive and it's sentient and it's constantly changing with him. So somebody's gonna go, well, these markings are not consistent from panel to panel, and you lazy or what? And well, yeah, I am. No, it's just some of it's consistent, but some of it clearly is moving as he is moving. And this all comes back to its mystique. And what exactly is it? Oh, another artist adage. The left hand knows what the right hand is doing. I have come to realize that a lot of the times when I'm drawing, everyone thinks, you don't draw with your left hand, it just sort of sits there and does nothing. But I will finish a drawing and my left hand aches just as much as my right hand, depending how long that session was. It knows that when I'm rotating a picture around, where to apply pressure, to hold it in position. So your left hand is just as integral to the whole process. as with most artists, whether or not they will admit it or not, you do put, shall we say, imagery of a kind of subconsciously into the artwork. I definitely have done this a number of times on a number of panels where there's, unless you know exactly where you're looking, I've kind of threw in a little something extra just to see if you're paying attention. Now, some of it, like when you're doing a melee shot with a big, huge battle sequence, something as simple as, throwing your friends into the crowd as they're running, escaping, or just debris, throw in something in there that is personal to you, like somebody wearing a Raptors hat. My little thing was putting in a little tiny mushroom. I don't know why. And also there's comic book conventions I shouldn't even be revealing here, but I'm going to. Artists have for years used for like license plates on cars and stuff, or street graffiti. Some of it I've never ever found out why it was, but in a lot of the older Marvel comic books, if you go to a dollar bin, see some of the older printings of the late or early 80s, and there'd be this graffitied wall, and more often than not, this little saying called Conky 45. I have no idea what that is, but I would see it. And it's usually the same artists were the same ones always putting that there. Another one is a license plate, 23 GNU, which I always thought was like a takeoff on 23 Skidoo. Now, when I get to the urban elements of the comic book, I do intend to throw some of those things in there, and some sayings in graffiti that I've just recently came across. One of my favorites, because it just I just burst out laughing when I read it, because it was ridiculous. And I've seen this particular piece of graffiti in and around the Toronto downtown core in a few places, and it's just peanut butter rocks. I guess. I like peanut butter, but I said, okay, I'm going to use that. Now, the beauty is in designing a world or a universe where there's these really bizarre creatures, in this case native myths and lore, and a lot of them, there is no description of these creatures, just kind of what they are, what they're about, and how they plague mankind. But there's little or no descriptive details, and so longest time, this, even though it's in pieces here, this particular preternatural creature is didn't know what it should look like. Kind of already started drawing the book, and I didn't have a solid figure out what it's going to look like when I was getting to those pages, and always turn to the best artist. So sitting in a little forest area when I was doing some of the writing, and I looked up into the Douglas fir tree that I was sitting near, and it had this absolutely bizarre growth sticking out of the tree. It just looked so out of place. But this growth was just, and I guess, I looked at it from another angle, and boom, there was my creature. So I just did a quick sketch of that weird growth, and it became the basis of what this creature looks like. So, here we go. So we start off with the sketch, plotting out where all the muscles are, things like that, what the overall shot comprises, and little things in there that, indicate the character's emotional state. So he's pensive, he's got that kind of look, he's not impressed. And then, bam. So now all of those things kind of fold in to each other, and hopefully you just get the emotional quotient that is required there and nothing more, and move on to the next action stage, and bang, there we go. There's another artist's adage I would like to impart, and that would be, art is never finished. It is merely abandoned. So like I say, even though I completed these pages a while ago, I was not done, because now here I am working on them again. But I'm glad that I was able to. It would have made me feel like I had not completed it to the best of my ability.
Well,